Esta casa grande tiene 4 aleros, donde se pasean los maquinateros. Esta casa grande tiene 4 aleros, donde se pasean los maquinateros. Okay, there seems to be a mix-up of the instruments or something. Okay, so this is some parang. We sing just 2 more songs. One is a song Peter loved, right? But first of all, at this parang, we're singing something about the birth of Christ. Yeah. Play. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. Ella que parió, saludos sin dolor. Señora Santana, vuela de Dios. Señora Santana, vuela de Dios. La Virgen María, la Virgen María, la Virgen María, del Belén parió. La Virgen María, la Virgen María, la Virgen María, del Belén parió. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. Ella que parió, María sin dolor. Ella que parió, María sin dolor. En el intento escucha una bulla, son los angelitos cantando aleluya. Son los angelitos cantando aleluya. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. La Virgen María y esa noche, la Virgen María y esa noche, son los padres buenos, son los padres buenos, son los padres buenos de este niño de. Son los padres buenos, son los padres buenos, son los padres buenos de este niño de. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. María, tú eres Madre del Señor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. Ella que parió, parió sin dolor. And finally, a song Peter loved. The song basically heralds and greets December. We are in the month of December, the beautiful month of Christmas. The month radiating light. Okay? What kind of movie is it? G? Estamos en diciembre, mes de Navidad. Olviden la pena, se vengan a visitar. Es el mes hermoso, radiante de luz. Es el mes que nació el escuela y otro a pasear, y la mayoría salen a parangar, por las avenidas cubiertas de luces, se van paranderos de la noche buena, por las avenidas cubiertas de luces, se van paranderos de la noche buena. No queremos tristeza ni malo recuerdo, solo queremos su buena atención. Este es el mes del niño Dios, solo queremos su bendición. Este es el mes del niño Dios, solo queremos su bendición. Este es el mes del niño Dios, solo queremos su bendición. Este es el mes del niño Dios, solo queremos su bendición. Thank you.
It's the first time that I am not responsible for the delayed start of an event. We gave the camera, the videographer, an opportunity to take some pictures. So we put the blame squarely on Burton Sankarali and his amigos. I asked him, what's the name of your parang group? He said, boy, I don't know, you know. But we just call ourselves Friends of the Parang. Give them another round of applause, will you? Good afternoon, dear friends and well-wishers here at this Lloyd Best Institute in Trinidad and those joining us online. On behalf of my sister-in-law, Myrna, my brother Hans, and their family, I welcome you to this inaugural memorial lecture series entitled Passing the Flame, which will be explained a little later on by Burton, who was a riding shotgun to the late Dr. Peter Brian Rajendra, in whose name this is being done. I was asked simply to offer some very short opening remarks and introduce this afternoon's chairperson, Yasha, Peter's paternal cousin, and like he was, an artiste who is reaching for the stars. And if there's anyone in this room who understands what I'm saying, it will be Kurt. But before I ask her to come forward, let me say that there are many theories about life and death. The Better Place one, we put that to rest. For even people who have had expired theological persuasions are beginning to reject it as only a far-fetched assumption. So when you hear people say, he or she is in a better place, some people are asking, how you know that? So we reject that. But then there is the hypothesis that we all lived before we came to the earth and will continue to live after we die. Some call it the big I word. And I'm sure that that would make for very, very interesting research. Imagine someone like Shamsuddin conducted research to find out if Peter's uncle Ashford was an evangelist in a previous life, or if I was a Bollywood star from Gorakhpur, or what Rowley or Donald Trump were before their earthly sojourn. or how much laughing gas Kamala Harris ingested before entry here. And in his own inimitable, soft-spoken style, I could hear Peter say, "Uncle, I think she take a little too much. That's why she laughs at everything." It's the kind of stuff that would have made Peter very, very interested. So, while we mourn, there is hope that death is not the end. And for significant numbers, it is not. After all, many people still believe that Elvis Presley is alive. I'm not the sociologist, as Peter was, to rationalize between life and death, but the very theme of this series is itself a perspective that tells us that his works, his deeds, and brilliance will live ad infinitum. It's called continuity, in which there is also a physical reality this afternoon as I pass the baton on to Miss Prinity's big daughter, Yasha, who will take us forward. Please welcome Yasha.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, good evening. My name is Yasha. Kurt, you put my dad before me, you set me up to fail, right? But I'm gonna try to live up to that. So once again, welcome, distinguished guests, family, friends, colleagues. We are here today to celebrate the life and legacy of the legendary Dr. Peter Brian Rajendra Hanoomansingh through this inaugural memorial lecture, Passing the Flame. I am your mistress of ceremonies, Yasha Hanoomansingh, and welcome again. So just a little opening remark from my heart. Peter was not just a remarkable individual, but he was a beacon of inspiration to many. Many of you, and many of us, knew Peter as an intellectual, someone who was never afraid to push boundaries. Little but a Talawa, as was so perfectly put when he left us not so long ago. And I came to know that academic side of him only as I got older. But when I think about Peter, the first thing that always comes to mind is his favorite story of me. And he used to tell me, you know, I used to watch you creeping around my house in Pampers, chasing after my cat. I used to watch you, and I never caught the cat. And he would always make fun of me because I never could catch the cat. I never did. But beyond our family memories, I have witnessed firsthand my cousin's passion for knowledge, culture, and community. And this is immortalized in his work. We are so lucky to be able to look back at Peter's writing, his accomplishments, and his research. And we are lucky to be able to reach out for it when we wish we could reach out for Peter instead. Today, we honor Peter's memory by continuing the very, very important conversations that he was passionate about. And I want to say a special welcome. We have people watching from all over the world, as we know Peter was well loved by many, many, many people. We have Lars in Norway who is watching, many family members as well in Canada who are watching via the online stream. We also have family members who flew in from Canada today. We have Ravi, Nathaniel, and we have Uncle Franklin and Auntie Mavis here as well. So welcome to everyone. So to kick off our program of speakers, I would like to invite Ms. Saria Mohammed of the Lloyd Best Institute to offer some remarks. Ms. Mohammed is an archivist and artist who searches for the history in the present. She attempts to weave these strands in community in order to imagine a collective tapestry of the future. She works right here at the Lloyd Institute of the Caribbean, digitizing the archive, and she also collected Peter's writings from the TNT Mirror and the TNT Review. Saria practices community archiving through zines, mass, capoeira, and liming with elders. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Saria.
Hey, thank you very much for that introduction, Yasha, and welcome everybody. It's really nice to see all of these people here who loved Peter. I only met Peter after he was not with us in the physical realm, but I'm very grateful that I have gotten to know him this way. So, Peter was introduced to me after his passing by Burton Sankarali. He described Peter as the people's philosopher, which had as much to do with how he related to everyone he met as it did to his championing of people's issues, whether it was his investigative journalism on workplace health and safety, unfair water supply, or retrenchment and labor struggles. From my engagement with his work, I think he was also an important philosopher of language, especially the Trini Creole language that is spoken here. Apart from being an excellent teacher, using Pekong to make heady economic concepts, nuanced cultural analysis, and media critique relevant and accessible to the everyday reader, Peter also commented on this practice itself. This analysis is extremely important in the context of decreasing interest in traditional media and the increasing proliferation of entertainment news, especially in the form of crime shows, which demonstrate none of the ethical codes or journalistic rigor that reliable news media must entail. I could not do justice to the scope of Peter's work in a few minutes, but I will highlight some of the key analyses he made, particularly concerning media, the role it plays and should play in society, and the language of communication that is used to inform the people. Peter gives us great perspective in his 1997 TNT Review article, Orality and Literacy. I think Peter understood the importance of liming and the everyday philosophizing space, oftentimes, though not always, a rum shop. Whenever I have to read before an audience, I always have to write, lest my meandering carry me too far off. But for anyone who knows me, I do most of my philosophizing in lively discussion. I have struggled with clarity and brevity all my life, but I enjoy little more than the experience of listening to other people's winding stories and sharing my own. Peter says in the article, and I quote, "Only sound genuinely tells of the interior." End quote. Peter sheds light on the fact that dialogue is where knowledge was traditionally developed and transmitted. In his 1995 Mirror article, The Nature of News, it's on that board at the back there, he highlights how the weekly newspapers more effectively approximate this tradition. He actually introduces the ideas of Walter Ong, the same theorist he discusses in Orality and Literacy 2 years later, and he brings him in at the end of this article in a way that's understandable to the everyday reader. Literacy, as both a practice and belief, has enshrined the view that oral traditions are unscientific and the knowledge held therein inferior. But it is now widely accepted in the social sciences that objective reporting is a myth. The reporter, the storyteller, is always a participant and imposes their values on the story, whether they're aware or not. Our ancestral traditions teach us this. This interpretation is also increasingly popular in public discourse, especially given the kind of reporting, or lack thereof, on the genocides in Gaza, Sudan, Haiti, and the Congo. So he rightly criticizes the perceived objectivity of the daily newspapers in The Nature of News. And in the precursor to that article, which was titled Watchdogs of TNT Democracy, he argues that the weeklies approach the news with more skepticism and allow for the community to have a say and represent themselves. The weeklies, by intentionally positioning themselves among the people, provide more honest storytelling by avoiding any pretense of objectivity. Indeed, even in choosing which stories are covered and which are not, the reporter's value system can be revealed. Consider, for instance, no media coverage was done of Chika Mose's excellent exhibition on the 1970 revolution earlier this year, despite the press being invited, save a community newsletter done by the Success Lab Until Networking Committee, which will realistically reach a much smaller number of people than the daily newspapers. Recently, I was talking to a friend about the low attendance at Chi's current exhibition on the UN's International Decade for People of African Descent, which ends this month. I was speculating about the reason people weren't coming to the talks when my friend reminded me that many people will not come when they hear the places in Morva. I forgot because it's such a lovely breezy space and it's always full of great company with huge windows that give beautiful views of the hills and the sunset. News stories about Morva tend to be of one genre, despite it being a place with a very special history where great numbers of people live, all of whom deserve dignity and publicity for matters ranging from community issues to creative endeavors, and it should be told in their voice. Music was very dear to Peter, and he provided crucial commentary on this subject. In Dub, Reflection of a Society in Pain, the Mirror article that was featured on the invite to this event, through a comparison between the emergence and impact of dub and what he calls its older and wiser sibling reggae, Peter highlights the death of a futurism, of visions of redemption. This speaks to a similar experience with the revolutionary music of Trinidad in the 1970s, which spoke of the downfall of colonialism and empowerment of the oppressed. Reggae, like calypso and rhapsody of that period, rose to its prominence due to its message of redemption and liberation. But this redemption never came, and in fact, many who identified with its message faced repression and hardship in the neoliberal period of the 80s going forward. Reggae was then co-opted as a cultural product, while the communities out of whom it emerged remained depressed, abandoned without dignity, and in many cases, actively criminalized and disparaged by wider society. Dub grew in popularity during the period of austerity in a climate of powerlessness and loss of hope for a positive future. It was met with a great deal of moralizing because of its lyrical content, concerned with such taboo topics as sex and violence. But as Peter and many others conclude, dub is the expression, not the cause of the pain, and comparisons can be made with the phenomena of dancehall and Trinidad in more recent times. The music may not have the answers to the problems it tells us so starkly about, but it is the call which begs a response. Today, this music is enjoyed by many, including the upper classes. The irony is lost on this group as they whine and grind to ghetto music inside their high walls, topped with barbed wire. A keen social observer, Peter provided an important critical voice in media and cultural analysis. In particular, during 1993, in his Mirror column, he highlighted the ideologies implicit in matters ranging from economic policies and negotiations to comics and television. He coined the term technical mamagism to describe the way trade liberalization hides its economic imperialism inside statistical indices that compare, for instance, local prices to international prices, as if these measures are scientific facts rather than social relations. Another analysis concerns the way American comics, seemingly trivial boxes of entertainment, naturalize foreign ideas of what constitutes normal workplace relations or the ideal lifestyle, one of passive consumerism and non-participation. Later the same year, commenting in the Mirror on the killing of Gael, he describes the inhospitable climate for local programming following the liberalization of the market to welcome private broadcasters. The explanation given for prioritizing typically American film and television was cast as a matter of lower costs compared to local programs, but he brings into question the role of television media as, quote, a democratic cultural medium or as an instrument of the business class. While television does not play the same role it once did, social media can be subject to similar critiques. It is shaped by and populated with content from the global north, which filters down to us as a sort of default programming. Ostensibly neutral, but of course, laden with the ideas and cultural norms of a society different from our own. If careful reconsideration of the role of technology was to be made in the era of television, there are even more media platforms to be closely examined today. Indeed, in a 1994 Mirror article on the need for a national technology policy, also on the board at the back there, he comments on the, quote, underlying sense of dispossession that endures in our cultural practice and intellectual traditions, end quote. This, I gather, is what we colloquially refer to as the colonial mentality. He rightly declares that the matter of a technology policy has to do with culture, highlighting the loss of ancestral land-based technologies in pursuit of modernity. So these, for instance, building tapia houses. In a review article a couple months later, entitled Culture as Artifact, he considers the role of culture as it is perceived by policymakers. This essay considers how the state reifies culture, making it an object to be managed. He suggests that the state uses cultural policy to legitimize itself, rather than to develop the culture for its own sake. I would argue this analysis could be extended to include corporate entities who mine culture for its marketing potential. I aspire to Peter's fervent pursuit of a wide variety of interests, commitment to social issues, and determination to live by his principles. I cherish the opportunity I had to spend a year of Fridays in very cold National Archives, seeking out his writing in the TNT Mirror. This exercise allowed me to recognize the ways that the Mirror as an institution was kind of a precursor to Facebook in the discursive space of Trinidad. I think this line of thinking is important to take up in the context of Peter's analysis, especially his reasoning on the role of television as mentioned before. While the forms and pace have changed, comparable problems and questions arise in today's age of social media. In closing, I would like to make a suggestion to any of you with an archive of valuable cultural heritage. Hire a young person, not me, to catalog and digitize your archives. I have enough work. Many of us simply do not know what preceded us, as it is tucked away in the archives, but it is by collecting and caring for the work of our elders that we can keep the fires lit. In his eulogy for Peter, Hans spoke of the outpouring of love from a wide section of society that was made clear by his passing. This lecture will be the first of an ongoing series that will grow this appreciation beyond the years of Peter's life into the future. The flame of social advocacy and critique of power may at times flicker, but we can keep it burning once we offer our own kindling, whatever form it might take.
Thank you so much, Saria. That was amazing. Peter would have enjoyed that one. Okay, so as Saria mentioned, we are celebrating Peter today. Peter was a huge lover of music. He was very, very passionate about music, so we do have some musical items today. We're going to go ahead with the first musical interlude, and I would love to welcome the incredibly talented Mr. Colin Craft. Colin is a singer-songwriter from right here in Trinidad and Tobago, and he has been performing for over a decade. He has years of performance experience under his belt, covering music from other artists as well as creating his own original music. And he's very passionate about his craft, and Colin's music blends emotion and energy. So Colin, whenever you're ready. Yes, please give him a round of applause, everyone.
All right, so this is a song requested by Kurt. I understand it was one of Peter's favorite songs.
Don't worry about a thing.
Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I. He sold I to the merchant ship. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. But my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever had. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of that can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Thank you so much.
All right, one more round of applause for Mr. Colin Craft. What a talent. What a talent. All right, so moving right along, I actually have my own musical tribute to Peter. Some of you may know, some of you may not, but I currently pursue an independent musical career. I'm very, very passionate about music and performance, and it means a lot to me to be here and to play music in Peter's memory, because Peter was the one who gifted me my very first guitar. And it was it was completely out of nowhere, so very Peter. Like we just gone over to visit and just randomly say, hold on, wait, go on. Comes out of his room, his office with all the equipment and everything. He's like, hey, just take this and practice. And I was like, okay. So it means a lot to me to be here, so thank you for asking me to be here, Kurt. I am going to play my little ukulele with Colin, and we're going to sing a song called Could You Be Loved? It's by Bob Marley. Peter loved Bob Marley. Kurt was supposed to perform this with us, but he got away at the last second. So it's just going to be the two of us. Announcement, Kurt is back on. Yeah, round of applause. All right, let's go. Could you be loved and be loved? Could you be loved and be loved? Don't let them fool you. Try to school ya. Oh no, we've got a mind of our own. So go to hell if what you're thinking is not right. Love will never leave us alone. In the darkness there must come out to light. Could you be loved and be loved? Could you be loved and be loved? They say only the fittest of the fittest shall survive. Stay alive. Ah, could you be loved and be loved? Could you be loved and be loved? Could you be loved? Could you be loved? Could you be loved? Could you be loved? You wanna sing with us? Could you be loved? Could you be loved? Hey, could you be loved? Could you be loved? Take it away, boy. Thank you so much, everyone. Mr. Colin Craft, Mr. Kirk Hanoomansingh. All right, I have nobody to say, oh, give it up for her. Thank you. Okay. All right. So now we are moving on to our exceptional first speaker. So we have two wonderful speakers with us today, honoring Peter's intellectual legacy. And our first is the incomparable Dr. Sharda Patasar. Please give her a round of applause. Dr. Patasar is a distinguished musicologist renowned for her research in Caribbean music. She has made significant contributions to the Caribbean and Indo-Caribbean musical sphere through her exploration of cultural and historical significance of music in our region. I love to see woman power. I'm happy to have you. Dr. Patasar, are you ready to present your lecture for us? Let us welcome Dr. Sharda Patasar with her lecture, Thinking Through Music.
It's slide this way. Okay. So I was just saying to Kirk, after all that music, I don't feel like standing here to talk because it sort of destroys mood. That you, yeah, I feel like if I could translate lecture into music now, right? Because, so first of all, thank you all for having me here. My family and Uncle Gideon, well, we call them Uncle Gideon, Uncle Hans. We go back a long way. And I was just reminiscing on Uncle Hans's role in my father's musical life. He was actually the first one to give him a plane ticket to go to India to study music. And during that time, for 3 months, there was an unfortunate incident of letters that passed between them, where a page that was meant for Uncle Hans ended up in the letters that he wrote to my mom. And in that particular page, he was describing how he had lost all movement in his hand. And he didn't want my mother to know, but that very page ended up in the same. So it's been a long, very long relationship with the family. The children we met off and on. I always knew Peter with a camera. He always had a camera, and then being a friend of Burton, I started to wonder how. How? So I'm very happy to be doing this inaugural lecture. Listening to Dr. Gideon's speech about the idea of death, I thought, okay, the lecture sort of falls into that, what I might call a more philosophical, magical realm. Because for me, music has always been tied up with a sort of magic. And when I speak about magic, I'm talking about the kinds of stories that I grew up hearing around music. For instance, we talk about the notes of the scale that comes from the sound of birds and animals. We talk about the transformative power of music, the power of music to tame animals. So for a long time, I tried to do that, actually. I remember a story where my parents would take us to the ashrams for summer holidays. And in one of the ashrams that was located in the hills, this group of monkeys would run down every morning to the ashram compounds. And the monks would say, during that hour, everybody is to be inside. But having grown up on the stories that I grew up on, I decided to stay outside because I could possibly enchant these animals. Never mind the monks were all hiding inside. Of course, that didn't work out too well, and I ended up having to run, leaving my homework outside, which was subsequently torn up and eaten by monkeys. Yeah. So there are many such stories. So my talk today is on the concept of Rus, and I've called it Finding the Center, because Rus is an underlying theory for the Indian arts, for the performing arts. Primarily it comes from, for music, it's imported from theater and drama, right? So Rus typically means flavor, juice, and in Tamil, I don't know how many of you have had rasam. Rasam is like a thin dal soup, right? So it comes from that as well. So it speaks to flavor. When I think about Rus, and you'll see the word terroir and wine, when we talk about terroir, we talk about the flavors that are absorbed. For instance, when we talk about cocoa in different parts of the country would have a different flavors because they absorb whatever it's growing around, right? So rasa is a similar concept musically. It relates to emotion, but it's not emotion. We can liken it to, for instance, the flavors that go into making a wine. the final result will be yours. The flavors are all going to be your bow. Bow. So there's said to be 4 seed dressers. How it works musically we'll come to, but it's just interesting to look at how the Indian classical system arranges these basic essences. Right? Can you, from the list, guess there's one ras that is called the king of rasas? If you were to guess which one it is, which one would you choose? Beer? Choose, I don't know, use your intuition maybe to choose which one might be your king of all us. Karuna? Sadness? It's interesting, the answers. Does that in any way describe your approach to life? You would choose Karuna as well? At both. Wonderful. Okay. You know, I did this exercise with some university students two weeks ago, and they actually chose the exact one. So I'm wondering whether it has to do with stages of life that choose. So the king of Ras is Shringar. It's romance, is love. So the entire movement is really that discovery of love, right? Through all these different parts, because the ultimate consciousness is that. Yeah. So what brings me to Ras actually is my own, so this becomes more personal now, is in my own personal journey through music, through this landscape. Having grown up within an Indian classical musical framework, the music is arranged in a way that speaks to times of day. It speaks to these emotions. And my question was always, well, what is a morning, if I have to play this particular raga in the morning versus play another between the hours of 9 to 12, midnight, does the mood of a morning sound and feel different to the mood of a morning here versus mood of a morning somewhere else, in India, for instance, where the origin of the music comes, right? So that search sort of began to expand, to incorporate how I feel as a Trinidadian, as an Indian classical music within this space. So that, thinking about this would naturally influence the way that I produce music, the sound that I hear when I think about what my music should sound like. And Ruth, recently we were practicing, and so I did a test, and I said, well, okay, when I play this, what do you hear? She's like, all your music just sounds like dawn. So I said, well, why? She said, it does that, right? So my question was really, why? What gives it that quality? I don't know. Possibly it's because for us, it's not an external thing. It comes from inside. The execution of those sentiments come from inside, but it also comes from the experience of the outside, right? For us, to exist, it has to be participated. Right? So you have to have an audience to listen, to give you that sort of, some drawing right now, for instance, from your energy, to give it back to you in a form, that I've absorbed. To me, it feels like a similar concept to Duende, if you want to put it that way, I don't know. It's sort of energy that rises, if you want to look at rust as an energy. Right. So, each one of this, again, it draws back to the spiritual traditions, right? Each one of these rasas come with a color. The color and sound in yogic practice, there's a point in yogic practice where color and sound come together. So you will see this within the 7 notes of the Indian scale, as well as these sentiments. And those are Sham, Sita, Kapot, Rakta, Gaura, Krishna, Neel, Peter. Corresponding colors, right? So let's start with Swara. Now I'm taking it from now. Those explanations come from the Natya Shastra. The Natya Shastra is one of the key texts for drama for Indian culture, right? The Natya Shastra is written over a period of 1,500 years, which to me is an important point to keep, because I feel that it has relevance to us in present times, because what it says to us is that, well, first of all, why it's important is that Hinduism itself is based on a tradition of debate. So the texts as you see it now were written over centuries of debate to bring us to that point, where they kind of have, some of them retain very universal values, and there's a set of texts that are more historical in nature, so they will change. Okay? So the writing of this thing over a period of 1,500 years also tells us that nothing needs to be set in stone. So it gives you the opportunity to reframe as you go on. As society changes, you are basically allowed to rethink it. So I feel that it's a valuable tool for us, because when I think about Trinidad, I think about Trinidad's diaspora. It's a transposed space. I think of us in a way like translated people. So this space for me becomes a space that's very pregnant with possibilities, because I don't see it as a closed space. So when I think about my music here, when somebody says, well, it's not Trinidadian, my question to you is, well, what is the Trinidadian sound? Because it comes down to questions of essence, right? And basically that's what the Rust theory points to, that idea of essence. So when we talk about nation, we talk about nationalism, the concepts of nationalism, the concepts of personal, collective, community identity, that would be my questions. Well, what is the essence of that thing that we call national? Or personal identity, as the case might be. So you'll see now, for music, rasa Rus becomes appropriated. This text was written in the 13th century. It's a Sangeet Ratnakar Sarandev. It spells out, it gives you the notes, the essence that is associated with them, right? So for me as a musician, this gives me creative possibilities to work with, because if these notes denote particular essences, then what do we get when we have a combination of notes, that are full of differing essences, right? Now, in the treatment of swara, it describes swaras that sound that is pleasant to the ear. But within that pleasant, it's a soft, pleasant, resonant sound. The word that is used for soft is this word, snigdha. Snigdha means viscous, like a viscous quality. My question is, well, what's that quality? Right? We don't know, really. But what I found interesting is the use of two terms that relate to liquids. When I think liquid, I think transformation, I think the power to mold, I think the idea of shape shifting. Those are the ideas that come up when I think of it. So it's just something for you to think about. I put this here because I thought it was a good place to sort of move towards, because now we look at the possibilities for diaspora people, which we are, right? What is so coming back to this question of what makes a national music, right? What gives the music a sound? To me, it's all conditioned by your physical geography, your cultures, your politics, social life, the way that a body moves through the space gives you, for instance, you could see somebody walking on the road and say, well, that was not from here. There's something intuitive in the way that they navigate the space, right? Before they even open them out, right? To me, that those perspectives are what the Russic sensibility gives us, an understanding of the Russic sensibility gives us. It basically invites us to think in non-binary, to me, because it is so porous in a way. Because it is a mixture, because, for instance, love is a mixture. Love can be a mixture of sadness and heroism. Let's say you want to be charitable to somebody. That's a mixture of images. So it's not just one thing. It's just kind of porous, varied thing that contains all these flavors. So for me, Rasa invites us to think outside of binaries. It's an invitation to suspend belief when you go to a performance. To participate in that performance means you suspend your own thinking to be absorbed there. Plus, it offers a way to deepen and expand. So, what I will do now is actually demonstrate, let's see, for you to interact now, to tell me what you feel from the music, from the notation, from the cluster of notes. So I'm going to play a particular raga. I'm not going to tell you what the dominant rus is, but you will listen, decide for yourselves what it might be. Right? And then I will invite Ruth to come, whereby what we will do is a collaboration. So basically it's a coming together of essences, if you want to put it that way. That's why I see collaboration. Let's see what we get. think I might need the microphone closer. But whether you could pick up on the mood of the raga, what, if you had to describe it? I know it's slow, so maybe all of them sound that way. But I could play another one, and you could decide. Can I? Okay, I'll play another one, and you.
Yeah, kind of like a yearning.
A yearning.
A curious yearning.
If you had to place it within a time of day, what time of day would you?
Well, I told him because you said what Ruth said, but I did feel like it was beginning of the day. Like,
Okay. You felt like it's beginning of the day? Okay. You would say evening. Okay. Why? Is this? Okay. Okay, it's reflective. You felt. Okay. You felt morning.
Yeah, I felt morning because it's almost like it's reflection before your day. That's quiet moments just before everything happens. That's when you get up and you stand outside.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of gives the mood of the sun rising or something.
All right.
It actually, I recently moved and there's a river outside my bedroom window, and in the morning I wake up and I just stand there, and it made me feel like there with the bamboo and the
Right.
river and the rocks. That was kind of, that's where I went in my head.
So then before the
Yeah.
day actually gets that noise and busy,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you say that.
I wonder if all of them going to sound the same way.
What is your, what was the time of the
Well, because I'm conditioned by knowing. so that's a question for me, right? How much of our conditioning allows us to actually, move out of the framework? That's really the question, right? Okay, we'll give you more. Any thoughts about mood? I don't know if it's been because it's been played on sitar as well that influences the thing, because the instrument itself gives a quality to the sound, right? And if you think about music as sound rather than notes, then you have a bit of a wider palette to work with. Right? So a combination of sounds will also give you the rust of a different rust, possibly, of the. So this one, does anybody want to wager a guess? With,
I was actually thinking, I was thinking with night at first, but then I got more of a sort of like afternoon, almost ambulating type of vibe, like walking in the day.
right.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
That's my the first one was morning, definitely. I felt morning over there. This one was like contemplated and evening time. So where you go sunrise, this would have been sunset.
So that's right. This is actually evening. So yours was backward. The midnight raga is just the first one. Yeah. So that one is, the first one is performed at between 9 to 12, and this one is performed between 6 to 9. So, yeah, both evening time. Yeah. The rest of it is more, the first one is more devotional, more of a serious mood. This one is romance as well. Well, romance could be also devotional. So that's it. It's not one particular thing. So maybe let me invite Ruth and Joanna to come. So what I will do is I'm gonna do one piece that is actually a combination of two ragas, and maybe you could pick up on, tell me which one. So I'll play you the one of the ragas that is combined there is the first one that I played, and the second one, Uncle Hans, you might know this because popular film music was that. So if you want to guess the mood of it for people who know the film songs, I think it's going to be easy to guess the mood. Sounds contemplative again. This one is love and longing more. This one is more of a longing love. And we have a lot of film songs. Popular one is Janika, Gaywoodin, right? A lot of the film songs in this relate to that emotion. So I've combined this raga with the first one, which is called Jog. This one is called Shivranjani. So Jog and Shivranjani coming with maybe similar, different sentiments. I don't know what they bring up, but you listen and you decide.
Good evening, everyone. Kind of forgot which mic I'm supposed to speak into. I thought that I should add to Sharda's idea of Russ by saying that I'm Guyanese, and I'm really happy to be here and to be able to play with Sharda and Joanna. Lived here for quite a while, so I haven't newly arrived at Trinidad, but we are talking diaspora, right? And we are talking about the merging of sounds and influences, and I'd like to hope that this particular piece called See Them Come reminds us sort of that Amazonian sort of way of looking at the world and way of life. You'll let us know if it succeeds or not. See them coming, running across the sands, whirlwind rising, fire in their hands. See them shining, children of the sun. Hear them chanting, thunder of the drum. See them come from lakes and rivers, forests and plains. See them come, mountains, savannas from every land. See them come, farmers and warriors, poets and priests. See them come, I'm gonna join them, come go with me. And Oya asked, who will trace the spider thread thrumming across oceans? Who will kneel ear to earth and hum what murmurs there? Who will chart the dark skies, stars burning in their eyes? Who will follow rivers, returning to the deep? Who will beat the drums? Who will dance? Who will sing a new world as the old rise? As the old dies. See that river glinting in the green. Silent canoes slipping up the stream. Someone whistles, someone answers low. Scarlet feathers catch the sunset's glow. See them from lakes and rivers, forests and plains. See them come, mountain savannas from every land. See them come, farmers and warriors, poets and priests. See them come, I'm gonna join them, come go with me. Thank you. Sharda, you're joining us for this one. This one is called The Center. Didn't realize that it fits your talk until I saw the title this evening. Yeah. Are we waiting for a sign? Are we waiting for someone to save us? Are we waiting for the time when the stars align with fortune's favor? Don't we know it's all right here? In the blood they shed, the tears they cried. Our ancestors laid it here in the flesh and soil that's give us life. Remember, here is the center. Remember, don't hold back, don't surrender. Remember, here is the center of the universe, of the universe. Remember, here is the center. Remember, don't back, don't surrender. Remember, here is the center of the universe, of the universe. Here we stand, palm to palm, a spider's web spanning oceans, our threads anchored to brutal histories, but buoyed by renegade winds. Along the arc of our intentions, fugitive futures bloom, tight buds, tethered to loam, nurtured by hands grown craggy with toil, grind with the soil of our aspirations. Here is the center. In the fellowship of trees dancing to the wind's lavway, here is the center, where feet drum earth and rum flows for the gods of marinage. Here is the center, where old stories gather flesh and come alive as we blow on their bones. Here is the center, the black hole that pulls us in and through to new horizons, blue with promise. Here is the center. Here is the center. Here is the center. Remember, so back to surrender. Remember, here is the center of the universe, of the universe. Remember, here is the center. Remember, don't back, don't surrender. Remember, here is the center of the universe, of the universe.
Looks right. Okay. Thank you all very much. It was a pleasure presenting, and thanks for the opportunity. I was happy to engage with you all as well. So have a good evening, and I guess we welcome the next speaker. Thank you.
One more round of applause for that wonderful, wonderful performance. The lecture, so moving. Thank you so much, Dr. Patasar. All right, so we are about to take a short intermission. Just to remind everyone, we have drinks available on the side there, in the coolers, water and other drinks. We will take a little break, stretch our legs and spines, and while we do so, please join me in welcoming my wonderful and talented friend, Mr. Darren Ellis. He will now take the stage and grace us with some musical accompaniment during our intermission.
Thank you.
big tune better.
He's a very old friend of the family, Burton. I welcome you to the stage. Please give him a round of applause, everyone. Oh, he forgot his notes. Very Burton. Let's just give one more round of applause for Burton. He actually organized, this was his brainchild. We're very happy to be here. Thank you, Burton, for having us. Floor is yours.
No, not my brainchild. Well, in the talk, I'll explain some of it. And let me tell, for those who want to go the distance, we have a tradition of liming after the main event. I'm just letting you all know that for those who go the distance, right? Right.
Los que mueren por la vida no pueden llamarse muertos. Ya a partir de este momento es prohibido llorar. Que se caen los redobles en todos los campanarios. Vamos pupal carao. Que para amanecer no hacen falta gallinas sino cantar de gallo. Ellos no serán bandera para abrazarnos con ella. Y el que no la pueda alzar, que abandone la pelea. No es tiempo de recular ni de vivir de leyenda.
I once sang that song in its entirety, and who knows what will happen, the night is young. I once sang that song in its entirety. I'm right here. But before I get into some of that story, I want to do two disclaimers. First of all, because I'm trying to limit this to 10 minutes, this second half is going to be a little rough. Brace all yourself. Right? Because I want to limit myself to 10 minutes. What I'm saying can be a little bit out of balance. I'm giving one aspect of things. My philosophical definitions of terms may be imprecise. I have to apologize up front for any lapses owing to the time constraint. And secondly, I'm speaking for myself. I did not put this program together. I was part of a team, and as you know, when we come to talk to Peter and the whole intellectual, scholarly thing, I made my inputs there, and I'll talk a bit about that as we continue. So I'm speaking for myself, not the Hanoomansingh family. If at times I say things that I want to get up front in terms of what I'm saying. That song that I sang, okay, and I'm speaking on this theme of passing the flame, this conceptualizing of passing the flame, right? And the song that I sang, I opened with, I sang it in its entirety right here, some time ago at a memorial for Norman Girvan. We had a memorial for him here, Norman Girvan. And I sang the song. And Peter kind of comes into this story because I don't remember him being here, but afterwards I was speaking to a newspaper person, and I told him what this song was about. And lo and behold, it kind of became the opening line, which I will translate at the end. The opening line kind of became the small headline they had for the piece, because it was one of those things covered by the media. We were talking about that earlier. And I remember Peter making the comment, when he saw it. I think he sent it. He messaged me saying, you gave them a good headline. So Peter comes into this story of me singing the song here. And in the context of that talk which I gave here, I noted the pictures of Lloyd Best and CLR James that are here. They may have been in a different position at the time. And I pointed out that they kind of frame a golden age of the Caribbean intellectual enterprise. The point I was trying to make, and locating Norman in it, and now we're locating Peter in it. And that kind of even touches on what Kirk raised, which I'll get to. They think Peter did. And, oh dear. and hence passing the flame, hence passing the flame. And why do we need to pass the flame? Well, let me talk a little bit about my experience of the flame, which, as I said, is just one piece of it, and even one piece of my experience. This process that is happening now, and again, it's very fitting that we are here because in a very real way, in an embodied way, Lloyd Best kicked this process off. And I have a piece here, there's some copies at the entrance I gave you that I wrote, that I tell the story of how Lloyd kind of got me and other people involved in this. I won't go into the whole story. But around Lloyd and the Tapia House, we kind of crystallized a group that was really doing Caribbean philosophy, although we may not have been calling it that in an official way. Kirk, you were there, I was there, the present Archbishop of Port of Spain was there at one point as well, and different people were here. I don't know if Assad came to any of our meetings. So in a way, Lloyd played with his own philosophical roots in New World and Tapia, which links with the roots of the nationalist movement, which were rooted in what C.L.R. James was doing before he left Trinidad. He was doing work, which in terms could even go back to the late 19th century, and we talking J.J. Thomas and Casabon, what our people were creating back then, So the narrative is unfolding, but I think this intervention of Lloyd was important. Following on that, I remember myself and another philosopher who was supposed to be here tonight called Daryl Naranjit. We spoke about the Philosophical Society, and we had meetings and gatherings, and I believe something under that banner is still taking place. And now we have an important process around Yard Campus that is again centered here, involving Royal Gibbons, that seems to be carrying this process to what seems to me a critical mass, because we are linking with the processes in other parts of the region and its diaspora, that in certain ways is ahead of us. So I think that's a very important thing that's happening now. And so I really want to locate the story of Peter and what we are doing, passing the flame, in terms of passing on that torch of an intellectual, philosophical, and critical, if necessary, confrontational process that I think Saria did so beautifully in the first part, confrontational process. And it's fitting that in honoring Peter, we honor the craft, or one of the crafts that he practiced, and he practiced so well, right? And I want to locate this in the context of the kind of society we live in, maybe the dark side. Well, definitely in aspects, the dark side of the society we live in, that did not really allow Peter the voice for him to fully express himself in his own lifetime, And it's almost could be a space that in that way could be very dark and very violent, and that is why I think what we are attempting here in terms of fostering, passing on this flame is important to structure in this deliberate way, as others, as I have been saying, have been doing, And it's a society that, do you know? And I heard this from something on Gael. The source of this is Gael. Do you know that there is a list? I'm pretty sure I heard the word list or something like that used. There's a list. There is a list of these gifted Trinidadians who kill themselves. Now, suicide is not something to romanticize, so I'm not saying it to romanticize it. But there is this list. And I think I might have encountered a couple people. Well, one I would have met in person. I remember having a talk with the actor Devendra Dookie sometime before he killed himself. But according to this thing, there is a list. This country has a list of people who kill themselves, gifted people. Perhaps the most notable name on this list is, I'm not sure exactly the date, but it's a known playwright called Errol Roach. I remember in my school days, I read a play that he did. It was on the list, and I read it on my own. It was called Calabash of Blood. And what I remember about it was that it kind of lived up to its name. And Errol Roach, Eric? It's Eric? You sure it's Eric? Okay. Errol, I always think of as a dramaticist name. Yeah, Errol Hill, Errol Fabian, Errol Sitahal, they're all drama people. So I just thought he was another Errol. Eric Roach? Thank you. I'm so sorry. This is awful. I should have looked it up. Eric Roach. Eric Roach drowned himself on Independence Day. That was his message to those who forged the love of liberty. Right? Yeah, Lloyd had that sense of how brutal and violent this place is. I think it was Wayne Brown who commented to a Jamaican saying, Jamaica is murderous, but Trinidad is evil. I think Wayne Brown made that remark. Yeah, the kind of place we're dealing with. And that is why, when you think of what Peter went through, I lined with Peter, we roamed the Badlands, but you could say, well, Burton, brings his fate upon himself, right? But Peter? What Peter did to deserve his fate? He was brilliant. He was unassuming. Okay, he did speak his mind when he's ready. You don't do that in this country. But he's unassuming. He's humble. He's hardworking. He's diligent. He's focused. What did Peter do? So in thinking of passing the flame, I was thinking of not having others undergo the kind of thing Peter underwent. As it's developed, I'm kind of conceptualizing, I guess I'm speaking for myself, something where, one, we give young or younger people a space to express themselves, or people whose voices have not been heard. Like everyone knows Sharda Patasar as a musician, but Trinidad, she's a musician, she's a sitarist, right? But it's an intellectual process, and she's an intellectual, So those whose voices has not been heard. I'm also, again, in terms of what I'm conceptualizing, looking at elders, people even older than myself, whose voices have not been properly heard or ventilated. So I see that as happening part of the process and how we are proceeding. That's my own take on it, right? In terms of passing the flame. Let's see where I am here, right? And in terms of, if I describe this in philosophical terms, another name that I just mentioned, Daryl Naranjit, we kind of collaborated. Maybe even before Lloyd's initiative, I think we might have been looking around for some kind of home for philosophy, if I remember the timeline right. And Daryl wrote a book, a philosophical, explicit book, that I think, even though philosophy was happening before in different ways, but I think in its own way, it can be described as a seminal book called The Righteous State, right? The book is about the state, but he goes into all kind of things about Descartes and Heidegger, and he goes over into Indian philosophy and and Vedanta and Buddhism and things, all that kind of metaphysics in terms of his discussion of the state. A very profound book and an important book that has been largely unknown in the Trinidadian setting. So, and I think I see him as another one of these important contributors to this process. Okay, so we are engaging here. Kirk is among us. Now, in one sense, Kirk, I think, is a very well-known spokesperson. So you say, what are you doing here, But Kirk wrote a very important piece on the passing of Peter. Not only was it moving as a tribute to Peter, but in naming it Peter Hanoomansingh and the Caribbean intellectual tradition, it seems that he was the first to properly understand, and I have to say this with a level of shame, given the amount of beers and other things we drank, right? He was the first person to properly understand what Peter represented. So I'm happy that he will be speaking next, and remember the line after. And I want to close with how I close the piece that I have some things available here. I want to close with how I ended it. That also gives the translation of the opening line of what I sang. It says, the line I opened with is from a Venezuelan song that translates as, those who die for life, we cannot say that they are dead. It goes on, at the moment of their parting, it is not permitted to cry. Fitting as Peter completely gave himself over to life. So my friend Peter has died. but the day will come when thinking and philosophy will flourish, when as a people we will seek truth and beauty. On that day, Peter will be born. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Burton. That was wonderful. I love that final sentiment there. All right, so we have come to our second feature speaker of the evening, as Burton already introduced him. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Kirk Meighoo. Dr. Meighoo is a political scientist and academic whose work focuses on Caribbean political thought, offering critical perspectives on regional, political, and social developments through his research, writing, and public discourse. So Dr. Meighoo will present his lecture, Rethinking the Left, from the End of the Cold War to the New Cold War. Dr. Meighoo.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all the hardcore people left over. I see there's some dwindling there. So I will try not to be too lengthy. And I want to thank Hans, the Hanoomansingh family, for asking me to give this address in honor of Peter, my friend, who sadly passed away. So let me just start. I was born and I grew up abroad, but in 1990, at the age of 21, after the coup, as soon as the airports were opened in September, I came down to Trinidad to work in the Beetham with unemployed out-of-school youths. My family, here and abroad, thought I was crazy. But that experience changed my life, and I dedicated myself to the development of Trinidad and Tobago ever since in whatever ways I could. Now, this path included working closely with Lloyd Best from 1997 to 2007, being a research fellow, honorary fellow, contributing editor and director here at what was then called the Trinidad and Tobago Institute of the West Indies. So it's very much a pleasure for me to be here in this space again, speaking at this first Peter R. Hanoomansingh Memorial Lecture about a subject that bonded us over many years, which is defining and redefining the political left and right. The danger of identifying with tribal leftism. Despite it being so central to international political discussion, the right-left distinction in politics is essentially empty and has no consistent meaning over time. For instance, in US politics, I never thought I would ever see a Republican denounce George Bush and the Bush family, the neoliberal, neoconservative Uniparty, the FBI, the CIA, the deep state, the military-industrial complex, NATO, and greedy multinational corporations, including big pharma and big medicine, big agri, for impoverishing and exploiting the working class. And how did the left over there become pro-war, pro-multinational corporation, pro-NATO, pro-US, anti-China, anti-Russia, pro-FBI, pro-CIA, deep state apologists and deniers, anti-Julian Assange, and the new Cold War warriors? This is a remarkable transformation. However, the right-left opposition is real. It's essentially oppositional, however, tribal and ethnic, using Lloyd's best definition of ethnicity as automatic solidarity. What I'm arguing is that in charting our own course and destinies, we need to understand this and make allies rationally, as opposed to tribally identifying with the global left, whose current interests, I argue, are diametrically opposed to ours. Let's go back to the Cold War in the 1980s. Peter Hanoomansingh and I started our relationship in the 1990s, both of us identifying as people firmly on the left, seeking to redefine it after the end of the Cold War and after the attempted coup here in Trinidad and Tobago. Peter and I had our political awakening during the time when the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was a real thing, and the constant threat of nuclear war dominated global affairs. We both considered ourselves part of the left. For both of us, that meant caring about the plight of the poor and the powerless, as the Guyanese economist Clive Thomas put it. Personally, growing up abroad, I was attracted and involved in many left-wing ideologies and movements. Liberation theology, Christian socialism, revolutionary third world nationalism, third world Marxism, the anti-apartheid movement, the anti-nuclear movement, anti-imperialism, anarchism, syndicalism, trade unionism, cultural nationalism, black power ideology, all those things I was just immersed in. Unlike many others, I did not align myself with either the Soviet Union or other Eastern European countries or China or Cuba. And just to put all this sort of left-wing panorama in a kind of perspective, I have this old reference book, Communist and Marxist Parties of the World. Do you have the images you could put up here? Yeah. Just to take a look at the Communist and Marxist parties of Trinidad and Tobago at the time. You had the Communist Party of Trinidad and Tobago. I believe that was pro-Albanian. I believe Patrick Watson and Clyde Weatherhead were part of that group, if I'm not mistaken. You might know Assad, I don't know. The February 18th movement, that was pro-Soviet, James Millett, right? And that's very much tied to the whole history of New World. Sorry? Yes, Raphael Sebastian, right, with the NAR and yourself. The National Movement for the True Independence of Trinbago, that Namoti, they have a different thing here. That's Teddy Belgrave, David Abdullah. We were just up at the march this morning with the union. People's Popular Movement, Michael Alves, Wade Mark was part of that, Daphne Phillips, Jennifer Jones Kernahan, all who joined in the UNC after in 1991. You have the United Revolutionary Organization. They were pro-Soviet. I can't remember who was behind that, the personality there. And the workers. That's it. It was sweet, right? Yes. And then Workers' Revolutionary Committee, James Poon, and they were also pro-Soviet. So you had this wide swathe of left-wing movements, ideas, thoughts, affinities, and so Peter and I, we didn't identify with the pro-Soviet, pro-Albanian, or Cuban, or things like that, although we did have our sympathies. Peter and I, our affinities very much overlapped considerably. Now, what we had in common, definitely, we just took it for granted that Western imperialism, the FBI, the CIA, NATO, multinational corporations, the military-industrial complex, big pharma, big agri, all these things were bad. And this was at the core of the left wing that Peter and I grew up with. I still hold on to those values. Strangely enough, the dominant mainstream left does not. So, being and I just want to also put another thing in context, especially after looking at all that, the other types of left-wing people. So being a socialist, Marxist, or left in the 1980s always meant that you had to answer questions about the Soviet Union. Right? So Peter and I considered ourselves part of the independent left, not aligned to Soviet communism. So we didn't agree with the authoritarianism, the totalitarianism, or the repression of the Soviet Union. We believed in freedom and democracy and some form of socialism. And we believed that the Soviet Union was a perversion of the socialist and Marxist idea. Now, this has precedence here in C.L.R. James, most explicitly, who was arguing this way back in the 1930s, globally, and also the many forms of black Marxisms or black and third world socialisms. So we cared, so what was core for us is that we cared for the ordinary people, and we appreciated popular and folk culture without looking down on it or criticizing it as false consciousness. We didn't see ourselves as vanguard elites, leading and educating the masses who were presumed to be ignorant. We were more or less left-wing populists, I would say. We sought to learn from the masses of ordinary people how they resisted oppression, what they wanted, as well as to engage them with our own ideas. We also admired the tradition of the public intellectual, best exemplified by C.L.R. James, Lloyd Best, V.S. Naipaul, and admittedly even the early days of Eric Williams. At the same time, however, we did appreciate the Soviet Union's support for third world revolutionary movements, like in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Cuba, the anti-apartheid struggle throughout Southern Africa, and its opposition to Western imperialism. So it was a tough balancing act, but one that we had to do all the time in the 1980s. And given our liberal education and exposure, it was also taken for granted that anything conservative or right-wing was not only inherently bad, but even evil. We could not conceive of even entertaining thought that could be considered on that side. We were part of the tribe. So then came the fall of the Soviet Union between 1989 and 1991. The right wing believed that capitalism and democracy had triumphed over communism and totalitarianism, and that it was the end of history. We did not agree. Locally, too, we had our own crisis of the time, culminating in the 1990 coup. Abu Bakr was part of the very left-leaning Summit of People's Organizations, informally led and organized by the OWTU's and former ULF's David Abdullah, which vigorously protested the NAR government's austerity measures which were imposed by the IMF. But Bakr broke from SOPO and attempted to stage a coup, holding parliament and the country hostage for 6 days in July 1990. He drew on much revolutionary left-wing rhetoric, perhaps taking it more seriously than many more established orators and agitators who apparently never really meant it. Maybe on so many levels, it was probably that type of rhetoric was more of a fantasy in the style of a Naipaullian satire. Like with the Soviet Union, Peter and I, we did not support Abu Bakr's coup attempt, like most people did not. But we were still part of the tribe. We wanted to salvage and hold on to those left-wing socialist values that we believed in. This was an opportunity here and around the world to redefine what left-wing meant. It was an incredibly creative time in the 1990s. All over the world, the left was regrouping and rethinking. So that brings us to cross-tread, rethinking the left, and the post-Creole. Did Burton step out? This one definitely involves him. My tribute to Peter here, which is available in the back, it describes how we met. I won't read this as well, but this describes how we met and our collaboration in attempting to put on a conference on rethinking the left in the 1990s. But I will say Assad was part of it, Burton was part of it, Glenn Ramjag was also part of it. I know he was here, I saw him earlier. So many of us are still here. Sharon, yes, of course, Sharon. I asked her to come, but I didn't see her. Right, so I described that more here. I had written much on the subject at the time in my own writings. My master's thesis was in Jamaica on the OWTU and the emergence of an open, plural, and democratic left in Trinidad and Tobago. My undergraduate thesis, which was written at the University of Toronto, tried to place Serval within a Jamesian Marxist understanding of Trinidad's history of class relationships. I wrote papers reevaluating gangster rap in the US, immigrant Indian business in the UK, and Caribbean Hinduism as ironically labeled incorrect resistances. And and I had published a lot in the Trinidad and Tobago Review at the time. Lloyd had invited me to write here, and I was exploring this concept in articles on postmodern politics in Trinidad and Tobago, outmoded notions of sovereignty, the end of the left's romance with labor, and nihilism in politics of the weak. I was being very provocative with those articles. And as an aside, Peter had actually published a critique on my piece on labor in the review. The last correspondence I had with Peter was in 2018 by email. And he actually brought up that piece, which was like 1997, I think he wrote it, 98. And he wanted us to revisit it, particularly in the context of his own move, as he described it, further and further away from the left, and a deepening, growing appreciation for Lloyd Best. Around that time, too, I don't see Burton here, but Burton formulated, oh, there you are, formulated an incredibly productive and creative concept of post-Creole Trinidad and Tobago, which captivated me as well, you would well remember. In fact, my PhD thesis, which I wrote in the UK, was initially meant to flesh out that concept. I was also heavily influenced by transgressive and subversive postmodern theory at the time. Around that same time, you had Chris Cozier, the artist, he began his very interesting work, deconstructing nationalist imagery and iconography. He later painted the cover for my book, Politics in a Half-Made Society. Steve Udit, too, was reimagining Lloyd Best's plantation society model in postmodern, post-structuralist art in London. And he produced a book called Creole Insight, which I reviewed, in fact. So there was this global transformation and redefining of the left. So let's say from the 1990s, throughout the world, not just here, there were other more important, I suppose, more influential redefinings going on. Famously, in the UK and the US, Bill Clinton and Tony Blair created a centrist version of the left that was economically neoliberal and militarily neoconservative, eventually almost becoming indistinguishable from the corporatist right, except perhaps in the culture wars. More radical versions of the left eventually became woke, obsessed with race and gender, often in alliance with the largest corporations in the world, and led by neo-postmodern academics, while being viscerally anti-working class, especially speaking up in the North Atlantic countries, especially the white working class, condemning them as deplorable racists and clinging to Bibles and guns, sort of like the recalcitrant minorities here in Trinidad. My own journey in the late 1990s began my process of breaking from the left. While writing my PhD thesis, I realized that my previous critique of Lloyd Best, which he actually welcomed, but I critiqued him as a sort of outdated, old-school nationalist. But I realized that was profoundly mistaken. Postmodernism was an intellectual and practical dead end. And I discovered truths that Lloyd had already discovered decades earlier. I reclaimed Naipaul from misleading left-right simplifications. The Creole left's irrational and sometimes racist hostility to the Bastille Pandey government led me to see essentially the tribal nature of the left, devoid of consistent, principled content. I remember sometimes Lloyd would call me up, just amazed at some of his colleagues, the positions they took with regard to the Pandey government. In the UK, when I was doing my PhD there, I discovered strands of obscured conservative thought that I never knew existed. This included very sophisticated anti-capitalist, anti-materialist, counter-enlightenment, anti-nihilist, pro-community freedom, pro-responsible elite conservative philosophies and movements. The audacious Camille Paglia in the US was also a big influence, as Burton and and Peter were well aware. She opened me up to Nietzsche and Jung and the counter-Enlightenment romantics and decadence. And she displayed, like Lloyd Best, what true political independence meant. Later on, Burton did mention Darrell Naranjit, who I got to know later, and I supervised his postgraduate work. And he actually introduced me to this during the War on Terror period, where the obscure world of Leo Strauss and the neoconservatives, who profoundly appreciated the ancient philosophers, especially Plato and Aristotle, over the modern. And they wrestled with the complexities of the use of power in order to do right. And then also, later, I discovered the anti-war, the anti-big government, the anti-monopoly and anti-big business libertarian right. And it showed me that many on the right were actually motivated by some of the same values that I had on the left, even if from different points of reasoning. And the third world nationalism, which I was very much wedded to, I realized had very many commonalities with conservative nationalism as well. And in the meanwhile, the global left was drifting from those values that Peter and I shared. So there were versions of a kind of liberal right and a conservative left, and they were struggling in global politics as well. And so on the global landscape, what appears now to be emerging is things like populism versus liberal elitism, or nationalism versus globalism, which I just see as the new incarnation of imperialism, or town versus country, or the coastal elites versus the rural hinterlands and flyover country. These appear to be the main divides globally that reproduce themselves in specific ways in various countries. And they crisscross the old left-right divides. And so not only has the dominant mainstream left now been pro-war, in the name of environmentalism, they are now anti-development. And in the name of so-called democracy and the so-called rules-based order, they are the biggest defenders of Western global hegemony and are against the rise of the non-Western world in global affairs. So I eventually accepted the conclusion that Lloyd Best arrived at way back in 1967 in his seminal essay, Independent Thought in Caribbean Freedom. The terms right and left really have no meaning for us. It was developed in a different context and for a different struggle. By us adopting right and left to define our politics, we were adopting their struggles, in which we have at best supportive roles, or at worst, we are irrelevancies and even obstacles or novelties. And engaging in that activity, as Lloyd Best brilliantly described in his analysis of Michael Manley's democratic socialism, it becomes substitute activity, and it distracts us from properly diagnosing and solving our own unique problems. I'm also reminded of a discussion I had with the late B.C. Pires as well, when we had definitely diverged paths. His idea, crudely put, was that the enlightened elite like us should guide the ignorant masses, and that ultimately they did not know what was best for them. And this was exactly like the Leninist vanguardism, which I'd always opposed. I believe that the elite, like us, many of us who are only one generation away or one job loss away from the peasantry or working class, must work together with the masses in dialogue to help them realize material prosperity, freedom, and full humanity, including spiritually and culturally. In seeking global partners and allies, we cannot simply tribally identify with the left. We have to align with whomever can help us reach our own goals. So if I had to define our local political parties in left and right terms, I would say that the UNC is a traditional but innovative left-wing party emerging from the radical trade union and black power movements, dedicated to the progress of the working class, with a uniquely low-tax socialism that struggles for the working class, farmers, small and micro business sector to participate in the mainstream economy. They stand for the equality of all our cultural segments and against discrimination and against the supremacy of one group over another. So we, because I am the PRO of the UNC, are the populist and the country rural party. I would characterize the PNM just as the Black Power movement described them, as a comprador, neo-colonial party, aspiring elitists seeking to inherit the old exploitative structures and merely replacing the old masters instead of changing the system. They're subservient to global capital. They are the elitists and the town party. In the US, we're seeing this kind of crisscrossing of old categories as well, very vividly. You could put up the image of the Republican Workers' Party here. There's been the emergence of what some people have called the Republican Workers' Party, which I think is really fascinating and interesting under Donald Trump. This time around, it's explicitly attracted old-school left-wingers, anti-war, like Tulsi Gabbard, who was a member of the Democratic National Congress and a leader of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Also, the old-school UK socialist George Galloway has supported Trump for his anti-war stance and his defense of the American working class. You could move to the next picture, too. There's even an obscure but very interesting MAGA communism movement. I find them fascinating, which sees the MAGA movement as socialism with American characteristics, just as Maoism and Dengism is socialism with Chinese characteristics. So, and this MAGA communism, or the MAGA movement, is focused on the upliftment of the working class. It's patriotic, focused on national industrial development, as opposed to globalist financial capitalism or services-based economies. In Europe, anti-establishment right and left-wing parties have captured government in Italy, in Greece, from centrist right and left-wing parties. In France, it looks poised to be the same thing. The BRICS are seeking to reshape the global political and economic infrastructure and to avoid the West's new Cold War against China and Russia. In Egypt, India, the Philippines, El Salvador, Brazil, and elsewhere, political movements are mischaracterized by dominant Western media using tribal left and right labels. They don't understand the content of what these movements stand for. I'll conclude. We must go beyond the labels of right and left, and we have to actualize the actual content of self-described movements to see how they match with our own goals. That, of course, means that we must be clear as to what our goals and principles are. We must not be caught up in any new Cold War or be caught in anyone else's tribe in which we have little or no say and which is not focused on our own problems. I would have loved to hear what Peter would have said about this and what obscure facts and insights he would have brought to bear or to challenge or to add further depth and complexity. At this first Peter R. Hanoomansingh lecture, that task is now up to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meighoo. Okay, ladies and gents, this has got me thinking. All of these wonderful speakers, these wonderful speeches, emotional sentiments, it has me thinking of a quote by this young man, Uncle Hans. As if with one voice, the messages tell of Peter's academic brilliance, compassion, and commitment to a better society. It still holds true, even today. So we have kept you back long enough due to technical difficulties, things like that. We ran a little over. Peter would probably be ready to go home by now. But we said we stayed for him, he would probably say, well, good for I gone, but we're still here. And we'd like to open up the floor for some closing remarks. Now, first up, I may have a very, very special surprise speaker who loved Peter very much, all the way from Canada. Can I call up Nathaniel? I can put it down for you. Come, you want to sit here? You want to stand?
Too short.
That's okay. Here's what.
I'll just hold it.
Yes, you can just hold it. Here you go.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, testing. I don't know all those fancy words like you guys do, but I will say something. Before Uncle Peter died, he said something about cricket, and he was going to teach me it. But then on the last day, we had to go back to Canada, so I couldn't get teached. So then, when he passed away, I had a dream, and he taught me how to play cricket. Yeah, I don't have any more to say a lot, so.
Thank you, Nathaniel. You know, somehow I feel as though that was the best speech we had today. Just like him. Okay. All right, so we're going to keep the floor open if anybody would like to give very brief closing remarks in the interest of everyone. Anyone wants to say anything? Anybody wants the chance to, you know, memorialize Peter? Perhaps... That's an idea. We have Ravi, we have Uncle Hans, we have Uncle Gideon, we have... This is a room full of media people, guys. Come on now. Ladies and gentlemen, Ravi.
Yeah, wow, kind of hard to turn that down. Thanks, everyone, for coming today so much and keeping Peter's name alive and keeping his mission alive. I like that term, the people's philosopher, because I think he was a philosopher and sociologist, but with purpose, meaning that he wanted to see society improve, and Trinidad in particular improve. Thank you so much to my brother Kurt, who organized the whole thing with a team with Burton and Saria primarily, but it was like a passion project for Kurt, brotherly love, because I kind of started it, but couldn't bring it to fruition, and asked Kurt, and he just took it to the next level, ran with it, to make it happen, out of love for Peter for sure, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for all the speakers. I really appreciate Saria, you know, she took the time to read those articles, analyze them, pull them together, and it means so much. So thank you so much for that, for Burton. Always love hearing Burton talk because he shared so much with Peter and he brings so much of that history to bear. To Dr. Meighoo, fascinating topic and perspective. I admit I'm an engineer, didn't catch all of it, maybe, but I did learn a lot and really appreciate it as well. So thank you everyone, and Peter talked about Dr. Best a lot, and I don't know all the history. I don't know if Dad will say something, but I know it would be extremely meaningful to him that this event is taking place in this location, and I thank Suniti for that as well. But maybe Dad, you could add a couple words? Thank you. I almost forgot to... Okay, one more person to thank is Yasha, who's done a fantastic job. And my understanding is that she did this very last minute, because someone fell ill, and she's done a fantastic job. And of course, Hazel. Hazel here has organized food and a whole bunch of other things to help make this happen as well. Yeah, share it. So thank you, Hazel.
Thank you all. My voice is a little hoarse. Came in from Toronto 2 days ago. I am pleased that Burton and the others who planned this event ensured that we had the facilities of the Lloyd Best Institute. I myself had a long relationship with Lloyd, including sharing his arrival in Delhi. And he didn't have the necessary health clearance, and so he was quarantined for 2 weeks in India. And he found time then to send me a note and tell me what his issues were. And then, as a broadcaster and his work in the community, we found time to reflect, to contribute, and for us in the media to support his activities. The point was made. Peter had a relationship here. Kirk Meighoo did. Burton Sankarali did. And so that this memorial launch would take place here is absolutely significant. When I put on my running shoes to come to this function this afternoon, I anticipated some reaction coming to this function wearing running shoes. It wasn't 2 minutes after I put on the shoes, I got objections from my wife. So I thought I would explain, not that I had any alternative dress-up shoes, but it was significant for me, who had introduced Peter to hiking in the Northern Range. And he followed afterwards. He hiked, he ran from our home in Valsine, past the monastery at Mount St. Benedict. And I suppose from his musical perspective, he would have been singing unto the hills around me. So there was some reasoning in my wearing running shoes in tribute and memory of Peter, for which running and hiking was an important part of his living. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uncle Hans. I actually didn't notice the running shoes, and now I want to cry. All right, everyone. Just to add on to the vote of thanks, so many people were involved in making this event a success. Thank you to Hazel, who organized refreshments, Avery, who is handling the stream, and the team in the back there, Steve for AV, members of the Lloyd Best Institute, Saria, Carmel, Suniti, Rainier, thank you so much. The organizers, the brothers, Kurt, Ravi, Uncle Hans, Burton, even though he wants to deny it, he was a very big part in organizing this, so thank you so much. To our feature speakers as well, Dr. Patasar, who has left, Dr. Meighoo as well. Thank you so much for the enlightening presentations. Thank you as well, finally, to Parang Entre Amigos, who opened the show today, Mr. Colin Croft, and Darren Ellis, who entertained us during the intermission. So we will now conclude our evening with music from Canta Paranderos, a fitting tribute to celebrate Peter's spirit and the connections that we have shared tonight. Thank you all for being here to help us pass the flame of Peter's memory and passion. Thank you. So let's get ready for Canta Paranderos.
Good evening, everyone. This is the group Canta Paranderos. We're going to be performing for the next half an hour. We are very honored to be here. Thanks to the invitation of the Hanoomansingh family into honoring a very, very special friend to me, which is Peter Hanoomansingh, and we really hope this effort, which I hope they want to continue for years to come, does succeed in his memory, and that we move forward and never forgetting all the contributions that he really gave as a professional, as a friend, as part of a family. So.
Oiga la música de los paranderos cantando paranda. Cantando paranda. Oiga la música de los paranderos cantando paranda. Contento al Señor, cantando paranda. Contento al Señor. Levanta señores, levanta señores, levanta yo digo. De los paranderos, esta es la paranda de los paranderos. Levanta señores, levanta yo digo. Esta es la paranda de los paranderos, esta es la paranda de los paranderos. Oiga la música de los paranderos, cantando paranda, contento al Señor, cantando paranda, contento al Señor. Oiga la música de los paranderos, cantando paranda, contento al Señor, cantando paranda, contento al Señor. Nació Jesucristo en la ciudad de Belén, de la Virgen María en la madrugada, de la Virgen María en la madrugada. Nació Jesucristo en la ciudad de Belén, de la Virgen María en la madrugada, de la Virgen María en la madrugada. Oiga la música de los parranderos, cantando parranda, contento al Señor, cantando parranda, contento al Señor. Oiga la música de los paranderos, cantando parranda, contento al Señor, cantando parranda, contento al Señor. Buscando posada, María y José, y en un establo tuvo que nacer, y en un establo tuvo que nacer. Buscando posada, María y José, y en un establo tuvo que nacer, y en un establo tuvo que al Señor, cantando paranda, contento al Señor. Oigan, oigan, oigan la música de los paranderos, cantando paranda, contento al Señor, cantando paranda, contento al Señor. Para la maraca y la gritería, respondemos todos que viva, respondemos todos que viva la paranda. Para la maraca y la gritería, respondemos todos que viva, respondemos todos que viva la paranda. Oiga, oiga, oiga la música de los paranderos, cantando paranda, contento al Señor, cantando paranda, contento al Señor. Oiga, oiga, oiga la música.
Ayana Jaffa. 1, 2, testing, testing. 1.
Testing, testing.
Yeah. 1, 2.
Deja de divertir, no te pongas a llorar. Deja de divertir, no te pongas a rabiar. Vamos a comprar un carro y pasar a la capital. No hay tiempo que perder, que la vida hay que gozar.
Te quieres divertir, no te pongas a llorar. Te quieres divertir, no te pongas a rabiar.
Vamos a comprar un carro y
pasar a la capital. No hay tiempo que perder, que la vida hay que gozar.
Nos vamos para la pastora.
Vámonos.
Nos vamos para la salud.
Vámonos. Vámonos y después ¿dónde vamos a gozar? Oh, ¿dónde vamos a gozar?
Te quieres divertir, no te pongas a llorar. Te quieres divertir, no te pongas a rabiar. Vamos a comprar un carro y pasar a la capital. No hay tiempo que perder, que la vida hay que gozar.
Te quieres divertir, no te pongas a llorar. Te quieres divertir, no te pongas a rabiar.
Vamos a comprar un carro
y pasar a la capital. No hay tiempo que perder, que la vida hay que gozar.
Nos vamos para la pastora.
Vámonos. Pasando el puente me dijo una moza, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dijo una moza, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dijo una moza, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dijo una moza, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Voy a hacer un puente para cruzar el mar y donde la gente sí pueda bailar. Voy a hacer un puente para cruzar el mar y donde la gente sí pueda bailar. Pasando el puente me dio una bolsa, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dio una bolsa, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente de Ciudad Guayana, sigo la paranda de hoy pa' mañana. Pasando el puente de Ciudad Guayana, sigo la paranda de hoy pa' mañana. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila y es cuando le toca. Me dijo una moza que le gusta mucho parar en el puente
puente de los maracuchos, me dio una moza que le gusta mucho. Para allá en el puente de los maracuchos, pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila, y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila. Pasando el puente con los paranderos, seguiré cantando diciembre y enero. Pasando el puente con los paranderos, seguiré cantando diciembre y enero. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila, y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila, y es cuando le toca. Esta es la paranda que quiere la gente, me dio una moza al pasar el puente. Esta es la paranda que quiere la gente, me dio una moza al pasar el puente. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila, y es cuando le toca. Pasando el puente me dio una moza, todo el mundo baila, y es cuando le toca. ¡Ay!
Río Manzanares,
Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre
Manzanares. I want to take a quick break too. Burton would remember this. First time I came here to Trinidad, we went to Paramin. Paramin, yes. Which Paramin was out in? That is the one we went up the road on a bus. 3 o'clock in the morning, we did not find a taxi to come down, so we came down walking. That was something I would never forget. That was it. Yes, yes, and not at all you would dare. Guilty as charged. Yes, yes. Anyway, next one. Anda.
Anda parandero,
Vamos
de parranda,
anda parrandero,
hace buenísimo tiempo,
anda parrandero,
en esa noche buena,
anda parrandero,
todos ya están listos.
no oyes tú la banda que está afuera, afinan el 4, mandolina y el bajo ya están esperando. Amigos, vamos a gozar.
Anda parrandero, y tocan la guitarra,
Anda parrandero,
como piden la letra.
anda parrandero,
Tenemos la maraca,
anda parrandero,
todos ya están listos.
no oyes tú la banda que está afuera, afinan el 4, mandolina y el bajo ya están esperando. Amigos, vamos a gozar.
Ay, 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 buena música para bailar, música para cantar,
Buena,
música para gozar. Ay, 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 ay,
buena,
música para bailar,
buena,
música para cantar,
buena.
música para gozar.
Anda todo el mundo a gozar con los paranderos, con los paranderos, con los paranderos. Anda todo el mundo a gozar con los paranderos, con los paranderos, con los paranderos.
Todos ya están listos.
No oyes tú la banda que está afuera, afinan el 4, mandolina y el bajo ya están esperando. Amigos, vamos a gozar.
Anda parrandero, oyes la bocina,
Anda parandero,
ya no te queda tiempo.
anda parandero,
Habla con la vecina,
anda parandero.
todos ya están listos.
No oyes tú la banda que está afuera, afinan el 4, mandolina y el bajo ya están esperando. Amigos, vamos a gozar.
Ay, 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 buena
Buena,
música para bailar,
buena,
música para cantar,
buena,
música para gozar. Ay, 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 ay,
buena,
música para bailar,
buena,
música para cantar,
buena.
música para gozar.
Anda todo el mundo a gozar con los paranderos, con los paranderos, con los paranderos. Anda todo el mundo a gozar con los paranderos, con los paranderos, con los paranderos.
Todos ya están listos.
No oyes tú la banda que está afuera, afinan el 4, mandolina y el bajo ya están esperando. Amigos, vamos a gozar.
¡Epa!
Anda parrandero.
Mi surveillait la nuit dans sa chaumière. Près du hameau, à casa son troupeau. Le ciel brillait d'une vive lumière. Ils ont mis à chanter, je vois l'étoile du berger. Ils ont mis à chanter, je vois l'étoile du berger. Je vois je vois l'étoile du berger, 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 je vois l'étoile du berger. Au bruit qu'il fit, les pasteurs de Judée, tout en sursaut pour retrouver Michaud. Auquel il dit, la Vierge est accouchée. Sur l'heure de minuit, voilà ce que l'ange a prédit. Sur l'heure de minuit, voilà ce que l'ange a prédit. 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 Michaud veillait la nuit dans sa chaumière. Perdu à casa dans son troupeau. Le ciel brillait d'une vive lumière. Il s'est mis à chanter, je vois l'étoile du berger. Il s'est mis à chanter, je vois l'étoile du berger. 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 Je vois l'étoile du berger.
Yes.
Well, we have no, they have like a medley back.
Ave, oh Maria, ave, ascendido en la verdad.
Tú serás la Santa Madre de tu Dios, Emmanuel. Tú serás la Santa Madre de tu Dios, Emmanuel.
Cuando ella fue tentado en su brisa esa vez, llegó ángel del cielo en su casa de Nazaret, diciendo a María, novia de José, ave, no tengas miedo, Santísima Ave, diciendo a María, novia de José, ave, no tengas miedo, Santísima Ave. Ay, 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 chiquibum, 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 ay, 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 chiquibum, chiquibum, chiquibum.
Oh luna que brilla en diciembre, se oye el rumor del cañonazo. Oh luna que brilla en diciembre, se oye el rumor de un cañonazo. Esta parranda querida viene a darte un feliz año. Esta parranda querida viene a darte un feliz año.
Un feliz año para ti, un feliz año para él.
Un feliz año para todos, un feliz año para ti, para él, un feliz año para todos, un feliz año. Chiquibum, 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 chiquibum. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Río Manzanares, déjame pasar, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Ay, 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 Río Manzanares, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Ay, 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 Río Manzanares, que mi madre enferma me mandó a llamar. Chiquibum, chiquibum, que les digo yo, esta parrandita mandada de Dios. Escuchen señores que les digo yo, esta parrandita mandada de Dios. Escuchen, digo yo, ay, 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 esta parrandita mandada de Dios. Ay, 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 señores que les digo yo, esta parrandita mandada de Dios. Chiquibum, 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 chiquibum. Sereno está el mar azul el cielo, entre palmas se oye el mar Caribe, escribiendo en papel un lindo verso, a la orilla del mar donde reside. Hay que sereno está el mar azul el cielo, entre palmas se oye el mar Caribe. Hay que sereno está el mar azul el cielo, entre palmas se oye el mar Caribe. En un velerito yo estoy cantando esos aguinaldos, estos aguinaldos que están disfrutando. En un velerito yo estoy cantando esos aguinaldos que están disfrutando. Se regresa el mar azul del cielo, entre palmas se oye el mar Caribe, escribiendo en papel un lindo verso, a la orilla del mar donde reside. Hay que sereno está el mar azul el cielo, entre palmas se oye el mar Caribe. Hay que sereno está el mar azul el cielo, entre palmas se oye el mar Caribe. Chiquibum, 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 chiquibum. Ay.
It's a goodbye song.
Feliz Navidad, feliz Navidad, feliz Navidad, próspero año y felicidad. Feliz Navidad, feliz Navidad, feliz Navidad, próspero año y felicidad.
We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas.
We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of our hearts. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of our hearts.
Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Próspero año y felicidad. Feliz Navidad, feliz Navidad, feliz Navidad, próspero año y felicidad.
Thank you very much for having us, the Canta Paranderos. Thank you, and thank you to all the Hanoomansingh family.